All right, we're going to start off with weather because colder temperatures and some major wind coming into our area. So Natalie, let's kick things off. We've got a wind advisory.
Yeah, very strong winds heading in tomorrow. We got a very strong area of low pressure that's going to be making its way in. So wind advisory from 11 a.m. tomorrow until 7 p.m. on Saturday. Very strong winds moving through, some rain, we got some snow, and then eventually that Arctic air that's going to be taking over as well. So this is what we're talking about with that wind advisory. Sustained winds will be 25 to 35 miles per hour, but we will also see some gusts, potentially in excess of 50 miles per hour, maybe even up to 55 miles per hour. So this could cause some downed tree limbs. We could see a few power outages by tomorrow afternoon and evening as well. So at this time, what we want to do is secure those outdoor loose items and just be prepared for a very windy day, especially for your commute tomorrow evening, because the winds are going to be strong even at that moment too, with some rain as well. For right now, we're hanging out in the 20s. We got 29 in Dayton, 28 in Troy. So it's quiet right now. Quiet start for the kids out at the bus stop, right around 32 degrees, but by the afternoon, the wind and the rain with temperatures in the 40s. I'll time it all out for you coming up.
Like Natalie said, it's going to be a cold and windy weekend. So the city of Dayton opening up 3 warming centers tonight. They're going to be at 3 recreation centers, the Greater Dayton, Low-Rye, and Northwest. They're going to be open tomorrow from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday from 9 to 4, and Tuesday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. If you need help outside those hours, St. Vincent de Paul has 2 shelters open 24/7. Women and families can go to West Apple Street. The men can go to South Gettysburg Avenue. We got all this information too if you want to read more about it at Dayton247now.com. You'll find those addresses, hours, and tips from AES to be ready for this weather system. The village of Yellow Springs taking to Facebook to warn of influenza A in the wastewater. Now they say the State Department of Health notified them after 3 consecutive detections. Gwyneth Falloon live tonight in Yellow Springs. Gwen, you spoke with doctors. What are they saying about this?
Adam, doctors, they tell me higher levels in the wastewater just means there are more people in this specific area that are sick with the flu. Now, they say that's very common, especially for this time of the year, and it's not unusual for that to be reflected in the wastewater.
When we shed things, so wastewater, obviously we're flushing things down the toilet. We tend to shed virus in the GI tract as well, so that goes through. They can test for it, and they can kind of determine the viral load in a community based on that, or at least on the watershed from that area.
So that brings up, of course, the other question, what the public should be doing to protect themselves if there are more cases in the area like this.
That's a great question, Adam. Like many things, though, you're going to want to make sure you are practicing good, healthy habits. That's things like frequent and good hand washing, as well as covering your coughs and sneezes. But doctors, they also say you should be staying up to date on things like vaccines and maybe even considering wearing a mask. Back to you.
Gwen, thank you. The controversial bill banning gender-affirming care for minors now one step closer to becoming law in Ohio. House Republicans voted to override Governor DeWine's veto of the SAFE Act in a special session yesterday. Tonight, Governor DeWine is standing firm on why he vetoed that bill.
The parent of a child should be making this very, very difficult, sometimes gut-wrenching decision, and not the state of Ohio. A lot of members, at least members I talked to this weekend, had latched on to the issue of sports. They felt very strongly about it. Their constituents felt very strongly about it, which again was a different issue than why I actually vetoed the bill.
Now, the bill would also ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. At noon tonight, Governor DeWine making moves on issues aligning with the SAFE Act. He signed an extension to his executive order banning gender transition surgeries for minors at any hospital or surgical facility in the state. Today's order extends that to any doctor's office setting as well. A spokesperson with the governor's office says the update was made after consulting with the state medical board. The crime rate in Dayton has increased yet again between 2022 and 2023. Lydia Bice spoke to the Dayton Police Department to find exactly why.
There was an 8% increase in crime in the city of Dayton between 2022 and 2023. Now, according to the Dayton Police Department, things like violent crimes and rapes were actually down in 2023 compared to the previous year. However, things like property crime had a major bump up, and that is mostly due to motor vehicle thefts. Now, Sergeant Kyle Thomas, president of the Dayton Fraternal Order of Police, says that he thinks those car thefts are up in this area because the local judicial system isn't necessarily laying the hammer down when it comes to these car thieves.
Doesn't matter how many people they lock up for car thefts. If they're not prosecuted for car thefts, and if they're not put in jail for car thefts, there's no deterrent.
Another main part of this issue is the staffing problem that the Dayton Police Department is facing. There aren't enough officers on the roads here in Dayton, but DPD officers are also constantly having to train new hires, which takes time away from building relationships within the community. In a statement from DPD today, the department says that community members need to be aware of crime in their neighborhoods and that most violent crime is committed by someone that the victim knows personally. Now, if you'd like to keep track of crime in your neighborhood, you can use the LexisNexis Community Crime Map that you can find on the Dayton Police Department's website, and I've also linked it in the web version of this story on Dayton247now.com. Back to you.
And speaking of crime, Dayton police, they need your help finding and arresting these 4 suspected fugitives. The U.S. Marshals Service looking for all 4 wanted on supervised release violations. If you have any information on their whereabouts, you're asked to contact Dayton Police or Miami Valley Crime Stoppers. Both of those numbers now up there on your screen. Police arresting a juvenile in Miamisburg today in an aggravated burglary investigation. That crime, they say, happened on Sir Guy Court, and police later found the suspect in a house on Cottage Avenue. Police say Kettering Regional SWAT team was called in to help with the search. 3 juveniles and an adult came out of the house during the arrest. Investigators say marijuana, mushrooms, firearms, other drug-related items all found inside. The city of Piqua tonight is updating us on its plan for soil sampling at the former water treatment plant. This comes after concerns that ESRG's controversial battery burn program had environmental impacts. The environmental consulting company WSP Global has developed a soil sampling work plan which has been reviewed by the city and Ohio EPA. That includes gathering soil samples to analyze for previously identified inorganic materials and other substances. Samples will be taken in and around the battery testing areas. The city says no residents or businesses will be impacted. Work will start later this month and should be done in about 4 to 6 weeks. The city will then share the results with the community when all is said and done. Lieutenant Governor John Husted at Wright State University today as keynote speaker for the Dayton Business Journal's Economic Forum. He says Ohio now has more jobs than people, all due to big businesses all flocking to places like the Dayton region.
We went from a declining population and job loss to a growing population and job gains, and now our children and grandchildren don't need to leave the area to find great careers. We just got to make sure we get them educated and trained and prepared for those opportunities.
So he's working with career centers and local universities to try and create the workforce that'll fill all those jobs. Well, tomorrow is the last day for you to sign up if you'd like to share your opinion in Dayton Public Schools superintendent search. The district has these 3 finalists and they want your help to choose the next DPS leader. On Dayton Public Schools website, you can read all about them there. DPS inviting parents, staff, students, and community members to take part in panel interviews. There's 3 ways to do so. You can nominate yourself or someone else to take part in an interview panel. Submit potential interview questions for the finalists. Again, tomorrow's the last day to do that. You can also take part next month by giving feedback on the live streamed and recorded interviews to the Board of Education. A disturbing case out of Cincinnati now with more clarity. We got the latest information on that coming your way next. Also, former President Donald Trump pulling no punches after his fraud trial, who he is now blaming for all his legal woes.
And Arctic air will eventually take over, but first we're tracking the wind and the rain, what we're expecting that's coming up. Here's a live look from our Eco Plumber Skycam. You're watching Dayton 24/7 now.
A grand jury will not indict a Warren, Ohio woman who miscarried at home. 34-year-old Brittany Watts was charged with felony abuse of a corpse after she miscarried into a toilet in September. Prosecutors say Watts tried to flush it down the toilet, then left it there. Her attorneys argue Watts was, quote, being demonized for something that goes on every day. The attorney said Watts was told by doctors she was carrying a non-viable fetus. An autopsy found that the fetus had died in utero. The charges against Watts are now all dismissed. Tonight, we are learning new information about those human remains found in two different places in Cincinnati. They do, in fact, belong to the same person. The coroner says the woman was black, between the ages of 30 and 50, weighed about 120 pounds, and was likely pregnant at one time, possibly given birth. Now, she was not found with any clothes, jewelry, or accessories. The coroner says it was clearly a homicide and will be working with a forensic artist to help identify her.
We will be reaching out to her. We did do a CT scan of the head and the body here in our office, and so we have a data set of images that we'll be able to provide her. And from my last conversation with her, that's going to be helpful for them in trying to digitally reconstruct her face. And hopefully in the next few weeks we'll have maybe a digital image of a woman that we could share with you.
Police ask that you call them if you have any information that might lead to the identity of the woman or the circumstances of her death. The Crime Stoppers number for that area, 513-352-3040.
Well, it's been a quiet day today. It was nice to see the sunshine, but quite a different story for tomorrow as our next weather maker does move in. I already have an area of low pressure bringing severe weather through parts of Arkansas right now. A tornado watch was just issued there. This is going to travel northeastward and rapidly intensify, bringing us wind and rain and a little snow tomorrow, and then eventually going to be seeing our temperatures really just plummet with that Arctic air taking over. But for tomorrow, we'll start out with some clouds and in the 30s, but it's by tomorrow afternoon. This is about lunchtime, perhaps some snow at first before it transitions to rain once temperatures climb. Not expecting significant impacts with that, but it will all melt away with temperatures back up into the 40s by the afternoon. The winds will be with us as well. And then snow showers possible. Scattered snow showers even during the day on Saturday with temperatures really falling. Taking a look at what we're expecting by our Sunday morning, back in the single digits, wind chills likely below zero. I'll talk more about those winds coming up.
As his civil fraud trial wraps up, former President Donald Trump slamming not only the fraud allegations against him and his co-defendants, but every civil and criminal trial he's involved in.
See, my legal issues, every one of them, everyone, civil and the criminal ones, are all set up by Joe Biden, crooked Joe Biden. These are all set up. Every time somebody sees me in court, remember, Joe Biden and his thugs that surround him did it. They're trying to get a man in office that can't put two sentences together.
Now, Trump hasn't given any proof for those claims. He says his court appearances are his campaign, and he intends to show up for every trial for that reason. Prosecutors in the civil fraud trial, they are now giving their closing arguments. Tensions, they remain high as lawmakers try to pass part of the federal budget in less than 2 weeks. House Speaker Mike Johnson made a deal with Democrats, but many Republican lawmakers are not happy with it. The agreement sets $886 billion for defense, $704 billion for non-defense spending.
They've got so much on their plates, they shouldn't have to worry about us doing the basics. And passing a budget, keeping the government open is part of the basics.
Then we had one set of numbers from the House and a separate set of numbers from the Senate. So there's a lot of back and forth right now. We'll see where we land, but I know there's quite a few in the conference that are upset.
Now, Congress has two deadlines this year. One is coming up on January 19th to fund about 20% of the federal government. The deadline for the rest, February 2nd. As South Africa, presents its genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice, the U.S. is maintaining its stance, saying that Israel is not committing genocide in Gaza.
The allegations that Israel is committing genocide are unfounded.
Now, South Africa, with the support of some Arab countries, say Israel's continuous attack on civilians in Gaza amounts to genocide. Israel, though, calls it a hypocrisy, accusing South Africa of functioning as the legal arm of Hamas. Israel, with the support of the U.S., argues Hamas uses civilians as human shields. According to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry, more than 23,000 people in Gaza have been killed since October 7th. All right, here's a live look from our Eco Plumber Skycam over downtown Dayton tonight. Enjoy these relatively warm temperatures because things are going to change quick. Let's check in with Natalie.
Yeah, just quiet and cold out here right now, but big changes on the way tomorrow. Those winds, the big story for tomorrow, they're going to begin to increase by the late morning and then continue to intensify by the afternoon and evening hours. So heading into tomorrow morning, starting with some gusts around 35 miles per hour, but this is about 4 p.m. Potentially could see some gusts close to 50 miles per hour. This is with sustained winds between 25 to 35 miles per hour. So going to be dealing with potentially a pretty dangerous evening commute with the rain around and these strong winds. This will continue into our early Saturday morning, maybe even some gusts upwards of 50 miles per hour. Isolated power outages could be a concern with this, especially for our northern counties. It will stay breezy during the day on Saturday before finally calming down by our Saturday evening. And then that very cold air takes over. I'm going to take a look at how cold we'll get coming up in just a bit.
The 2022 National Report Card scores dropping to the lowest levels they've seen in decades. Why some education leaders are not happy with the former chief medical advisor's response to the issue. We're also partnering with local community leaders to help put an end to hunger in the area, especially for children. How you can donate to our food drive. That's next. You're watching Dayton 24/7 Now. The 2022 Nations Report Card showing pandemic reading scores dropped to the lowest level in 3 decades. Math scores, they dropped for the first time in 50 years. Yet Dr. Anthony Fauci reportedly told lawmakers he is, quote, not convinced children suffered learning loss during the pandemic. Some education leaders are upset with his response.
I don't know any parent who would agree with that assessment. You know, there's study after study. Throughout the hearing, he either forgot details about what happened, or there's these multi-layers in the bureaucracy of what's supposed to be accountability.
Now, Fauci spent 14 hours this week in closed-door testimony as lawmakers pressed him on America's COVID-19 response and the closings of schools across the nation. He'll testify again at a yet-to-be-scheduled public hearing on Capitol Hill in the coming months. Now, that leads us to today's question of the day. For today's question, we want to know, do you think kids suffered learning loss during the COVID pandemic? You can share your opinion by voting at Dayton247now.com. Just click on the question of the day heading. That is in the news tab. Now, we asked you yesterday, do you think Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas should be impeached? Of more than 11,000 votes, 86% of you saying yes, 14% of you saying no. Community leaders across our area, they are joining together this month to combat hunger in the area. The Super Bowl of Caring is helping to eliminate child hunger in Dayton. Our partners will be accepting food and monetary donations throughout the area. Those donations will then be distributed to 3 local organizations: the Food Bank for Love of Children, or Flock, and the House of Bread. You can contribute right now if you'd like by scanning that QR code you see there on your screen on the right-hand side. The donation drive ends February 12th. And we have all of this information plus stories on just how important it is to fight child hunger right now on our website, Dayton247now.com. Just click on the Super Bowl of Caring heading in the news tab. All right, well, we made it official. One of Ohio State's most productive receivers in recent history is going to the pros. Matt Digby is going to detail Marvin Harrison Jr.'s accomplishments with the Buckeyes next. You're watching Dayton 24/7 Now.